air intake?
This regular meeting of the Navasota City Council is called to order on the 11th day of September, 2023 in council chambers. Let the record show all council members are present. Welcome, and thank you all for being here this evening. We ask that you put your cell phones in the silent mode. And a reminder, visitors, please sign in. If you wish to speak under visitors' remarks, please fill out the form found in back. State your name and address at the podium, as we must document all meeting business and remarks limited to 3 minutes. Tonight's invocation will be led by Pastor Mac Vaughn, and then following that, our pledge will be led by local Scout Troop 101.
Well, it's nice to see all these smiling faces tonight. Come together with positive attitudes. Okay, we're going to hold you to it. And you too. Let's pray. Oh, gracious God, it's a horrible reminder of days that have gone past and lives that were lost. We're constantly reminded of how our safety and all is compromised nowadays, and we just lift up those who were changed totally and lost loved ones in 9/11. God, it was a horrible thing. We pray that our leaders, national leaders, have an epiphany of what really is needed in our country nowadays. That they might bring factions back together, that we might find a spirit of peace and love and harmony amongst our citizens. God, we thank you for our city council that comes together this evening, as many other evenings, and share their gifts and skill sets with us, that they seek to do what's best for our community, and we trust that it will be the best for our community. God, we ask that you pray a hedge of protection, or we pray a hedge of protection around our law enforcement, and give thanks for those who protect us day in and day out, as well as our first responders. God, as we conduct the business of our city, may a spirit of grace and harmony and joy be with us now. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can join us in the Texas flag, too.
Honor
the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
If y'all wait just a second, I want to get y'all's picture, please. Y'all can face me.
That was a perfect stair step.
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 3. All right. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Item 3, remarks of visitors.
You have one there.
I have one here. Joanne Meyer.
I wanted to talk some about the water rates increase that we have coming up. I have only lived in Navasota for a little under a year, and I've not been able to use the city water because My clothes smell, my house smells, my cats refuse to drink it, they go scratch to try and cover it up. We all drink bottled water, and I've done that for the past 11 months. And the only thing that appreciates the water that the city provides are my trees and my grass. Thank you.
We have a proclamation in recognition of September 11th and the National Day of Service and Remembrance. Whereas 22 years ago on September 11th, 2001, the American people endured the worst attack on U.S. soil in our nation's history with courage and heroism. Whereas in response to this tragedy, Americans across the country united together across differences to stand together to see each other's humanity, grieve together, take care of one another, and to do the hard work of rebuilding and uplifting neighborhood by neighborhood. In 2002, family members of those killed and injured on 9/11 joined with first responders and others to create 9/11 Day, or Patriots Day as many take it, as a way to annually and forever encourage all Americans to remember and pay tribute on the anniversary of September 11, 2001 attacks through acts of service and volunteerism, and to keep Americans' promise to never forget. Whereas the Serve America Act, passed by Congress and enacted into law on April 21, 2009, recognized September 11th as an annual National Day of Service and Remembrance and charged the AmeriCorps agency with leading this nationwide effort. Whereas on the anniversary of September 11th attacks, it's fitting to pay tribute to the strength and resilience of the American people through service to our nation and to our communities. Whereas by serving on this National Day of Service and Remembrance, we honor those killed and injured, pay tribute to those who responded in service and compassion, and honor those who continue to serve our country, including active duty and reserve soldiers and their families, veterans, and first responders. Whereas September 11th National Day of Service and Remembrance commemorative activities are being organized by a variety of nonprofits, faith-based and community groups, public agencies, educational institutions, private business, and other organizations across the nation. To commemorate this day, communities across the nation will unite in service across divides, differences, and ideologies to meet vital community needs in education, health, disaster relief, and more. Whereas on September 11th, 2023, and the days preceding and following this day, community members in Navasota, Texas have the opportunity to honor the fallen and commemorate the continued American spirit of unity through service. Stepping forward to serve in a remarkable spirit of honor and compassion, this year's September 11th National Day of Service and Remembrance projects will help lift up our communities while memorializing the events of that fateful day more than 20 years ago. Now therefore, I, Burt Miller, Mayor of the City of Navasota, do proclaim September 11th a National Day of Service and Remembrance in Navasota, Texas, and call upon the people of Navasota to honor the lives of those lost by participating in community service and remembrance ceremonies on this day and throughout the year. Signed this 11th day of September, 2023.
Chiefs, come up here. Both chiefs. Thank you, Chiefs.
report. Mr. Weeks.
Mayor's members of council, Peggy Johnson, our HR director, is going to come up and introduce some new employees for the city of Navasota, as well as welcome another employee that left us, that saw the grass isn't always greener on the other side, came back to us.
Had to call him out, didn't you?
Had to. We're glad to have him back, though.
Good evening, Mayor Miller and the council members. At this time, I would like to introduce our new employees to the city of Navasota. And as Mr. Weed said, we have some returnees back to the city of Navasota, and we're glad to have them also back. At this time, I would like to introduce Swank Backus. Swank Backus is a native of Navasota. He was hired here at the city of Navasota on August the 7th as a police officer, and after completing his field officer training, he was promoted to a police investigator in our criminal investigation department here at the city of Navasota. Swank comes with 10 years and 10 months of law enforcement experience. He has an advanced license, certified license, and he started his career at the Grimes County Sheriff's Office Jail in February of 2009. Also held a dispatch license. He attended Teeks Police Academy in December of 2011 and became a deputy until March 2014. Then he moved to Fort Bend County February 2015 to March 2018, and went back to the Grimes County Sheriff's Office March 2018 until September 2022, and that's where he earned his investigator's rank. Joined the Grimes County Constable Office in October 2022, and resigned in July of 2023 and came to join the city of Navasota Police Department as our investigator in our criminal investigator department. So we'd like to welcome Swank back. Next we have Dan Xavier Adams. Dan Xavier Adams is a native of Brenham, Texas. He was hired back with the city of Navasota on August the 23rd as a police investigator in our criminal investigation department with the Navasota Police Department. He has 5 years and 2 months of law enforcement experience. He holds an intermediate license. He started at Navasota Police Department as a dispatcher in October of 2017. Then he was sponsored, the city sponsored him to go to Teeks Police Academy in June of 2018. He graduated, and then he held the police officer position until February of 2021. And he left and started working for Lee County Sheriff's Office in February 2021, earning his investigator's license, and then he was promoted to lieutenant investigator rank. He reapplied with the city of Navasota in the month of August and was hired as a police investigator. So we'd like to welcome Mr. Adams back, and his control number is 9306. And I'm sorry, I forgot to give you. Welcome, Adams. And let me give you Swank's number. Do I have it?
BR 549.
Yeah.
Make it
Okay,
10.
10. Okay, 10. Next, I would like to introduce Ricardo Sanchez. He is a utility technician. Mr. Ricardo is new to the city of Navasota. He was hired on August the 27th, no, I'm sorry, July 27th, here at the city of Navasota as a utility technician in our Public Works Utility Department. He's new to the community. He moved here March of this year, and he has been a volunteer firefighter here, and now he's working as a utility technician in the Public Works Department, Public Work Utility Department. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Sanchez. I would like to call Miss Lindsay Cox up, please. Come. Lindsay Cox is a native of Jasper, Texas. She was hired with the city of Navasota as a library clerk at the Navasota Public Library September the 5th. Lindsay worked at the Deep East Texas Council of Government in Lufkin, Texas from 2003 to 2021. In 2022, she moved on to work for the Jasper County Appraisal District in Jasper, Texas, until she accepted the library position at the Navasota Public Library. Education and intern history. In June of 2016, Lindsay received a Bachelor's of Art degree in history, and in December 2020, she received a Master's of Library Science degree from the Texas Women University in Denton, Texas. During her graduation studies, Lindsay interned at the Kirk Memorial Public Library in Lufkin, Texas. She is also an associate with the Jasper County Historical Commission. So if y'all would help me welcome Lindsay Cox to the city. Next, we have Edwin Sandoval, who is a return rehire for the city of Navasota.
Yeah.
I'll do it. That's it.
Okay.
Because they love you.
Edwin Sandoval has already 15 years in with the city of Navasota. He was first hired on in our Public Works Department in the Utility Department as a meter maintenance locator. Then he later on changed and moved over to the Street Department as a heavy equipment operator. That was his 15 years with the city. He left June the 7th of this year, and he returned back to the city of Navasota
I miss y'all.
on Tuesday, September the 5th, as our project manager. So if you would help me to welcome him back to the city.
Welcome back.
I love you didn't even have to read notes on that. You knew him like the back of your hand.
Is that all?
That's
Thank
all
you.
for that. Mayor and council, next item is recognition of years of service.
Now, council members, I'd like to call Miss Hattie Wells to the front, please.
Hattie, I need you to come see Miss Peggy.
There's a story behind that.
Yeah.
Miss Hattie. Miss Hattie was employed with the city of Navasota on August the 7th of 2018, and she was hired on as a part-time receptionist. During her tenure here at the city of Navasota, positions that Miss Hattie have held was utility clerk. She was transferred from a part-time receptionist to a utility clerk on October the 4th of 2018. And then she was transferred to a permit clerk of April 1st of 2021. So I would like to present this certificate of achievement to Miss Hattie Wells in appreciation of her 5 years of dedicated services to the city of Navasota.
Turn around for pictures,
Yeah, photo, so.
please.
And Mayor, the next item, so John McKay is going to come up and give an update on our CIP projects, capital improvement projects.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. John McKay, graduate civil engineer. So just kind of starting off from the top, the big CIP project, the big capital improvement project. We are starting water lines on Horlock this week. We're still finishing up services and water on Sycamore and Kettler. Next, we're targeting Schumacher is the next on the list. So just so y'all kind of hear it in numbers, last month we put in about a half a mile worth of water and sewer service between the two. A little bit more sewer than water. Road maintenance project, that's pretty much done, closed out. We're going over the closeout list one last time to make sure everything is hit. We're doing that this week. As Jason mentioned, we're already starting to target streets for next year. So now it's time to be planning to hit it next year for the next set of maintenance. Fire hydrants, we still have one straggler there out by Southland Title. We dug up on that one today and found it was a little bit shallower than we expected, so we're having to order in a different hydrant. It's probably a couple of weeks out before we get to that one. We get that part in. Airport utilities, the water line, they're actually setting up to test it as we speak, pressure test it, and then they'll have to do their state tests and all that fun jazz. Then they'll work on testing out the sewer. The first concrete pour on the south driveway is currently scheduled for tomorrow if the rain holds off for us. The clarifier, the large clarifier is commissioned. It is working. Everything seems to be going great with it, so that's put to bed. Last week we also had the final inspection of the Hollister gas regulator station. It passed. It looks great. It really does. There's some seeding they're going to come back and do. There's no point in having them do that now. So they're going to come back this fall when the weather cools off and there's a little bit of rain. Something for the grass to actually grow on. And finally, I'm sure everyone's noticed there is a substantial leak that was in front of Arlen's. We got it contained, but to properly fix it, we're going to be going back at it tomorrow. We're having to install some new valves, they're called line stops. They're temporary valves where we can shut off water on both sides of the pipe. We are actually going to have to cut out that piece of pipe and put in a new piece, couple it all together before we can bury that hole back. So that should be going on tomorrow. So that's all I've got unless y'all have some questions.
Thank you, John.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That's all I got, Mayor.
Okay. Any reports from council on boards and commissions? All right, some things coming up. We've got Rattler Homecoming is this weekend, so we've got lots of alumni visiting our community, so be sure to welcome them back to town. Hope for a Rattler win. The 16th, Saturday, the Grimes County Youth Football Association is kicking their home season off at August Horse Fields. So come out and check that out. On the 21st of September, the Small Business Development Center hosting a Start, Grow, and Succeed Small Business Workshop from noon to 1 at the library. You can call 936-261-9242 to register for that. On the 23rd of September, we have a downtown sip and shop. So for that, I believe, I forget the time on that. When does that thing start? It's the evening, isn't it?
2 to 5 usually, or
Okay.
something like that.
I forgot to write the time down. That's on the 23rd. And then coming up with the Navasota Theater Alliance, their next show is called 39 Steps, and it runs from September 22nd through October the 8th. And down the road a bit, but we want to get, we just started putting the word out that this year's National Night Out, hosted by Navasota Police Department, is October 17th. And we do need block party hosts. So we'd like for you to, if you would, call 825-6124. We've got to dial 936 now. 936-825-6124 for if you'd like to host or just get more information and get registered for a National Night Out. And they're also that same evening at the library, there'll be a nonprofit fair, so there'll be some nonprofit groups at the library there if you want to get information from them on how you can participate with their organization or contribute to their organization. And then just down the road a bit later in October, Lanterns and Legends will be held at the Oakland Cemetery, hosted again by Navasota Theater Alliance. And it's going to be a neat theme this year, Faces Behind the Facades. So the many names that you see on top of the buildings, there's a story behind those. So you're going to get to hear about that, and those who have attended before, I know, will look forward to it. It's a really neat event that the Theater Alliance puts on every year.
That Sip and Shop is from 10 to 5 on the 23rd.
Okay, 10 to 5 would be on the 23rd. Thank you. All right, item number 5, conduct a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment on proposed budget for City of Navasota for fiscal year 23-24. Mr. Weeks?
Mayor, do you want any comments first, or you want me to present?
Open the public hearing as well?
Huh?
Open the public hearing?
Yeah. We'll open the hearing at 6:28. Go ahead and just give the background and whatnot, so we'll open it up.
Mayor and council and audience, so this is a public hearing on the annual budget for fiscal year 2023 to 2024. Our fiscal year, as a reminder, starts October 1st of this year and goes through September 30th of next year. So during our workshop, we went over what we call strategic plan, some areas of emphasis, and so the budget's being created around our strategic plan that the council has put together for 23-24, which included items related to planning and economic development, marketing communications, quality of life, staffing, as well as human resources, facilities, buildings, and infrastructure. Economic development picture currently right now in residential areas of development, we have Pecan Lakes Phase 4 that's underway. We have Hidden Hills Phase 1 and 2. And Pecan Grove is working on the site plans for that. Commercials that we've had over the last year, Northside Market, the C-Store fuel source, you've actually probably driven by there on North of Saul. You've seen that where the gas pumps are, the structure's actually going up for that over the last week. Jack in the Box has been open. Team Elliott Ford's open. Got the Young Life building remodel, which was on the other side of the railroad tracks here. Navasota Welding Supply. And then also the quick serve breakfast retail Starbucks that has came and had a variance request approved. Historical residential building permits, so you'll see from 2018 all the way to 2022 our residential permits have increased, and year to date we've got 56. Again, on the year to date we're a little behind where we were last year, and that's primarily related to the materials related to transformers. So there's a backlog of transformers to try to get those, and so until the transformers were delivered, building permits weren't able to be issued because the builders they weren't going to start building. And now that those transformers in Pecan Lakes Phase 4 as well as Hidden Hills have been delivered, if you go out there, it's unreal how many houses they've already up and going. So they're moving forward this year. Historical new improvements in personal property. So you'll see last year the certified appraised values, it had nearly $34 million worth of new improvements. A lot of that is related to your Team Elliott Ford, Navasota Welding Supply, your Jack in the Box, the Chicken Express, a lot of your commercial adds to that, as well as your Phase 3 and some of Phase 4 of your, or Phase 2, finishing Phase 2 and Phase 3, all the phases of 3 at Pecan Lakes. So budget highlights. So the budget has been prepared having a tax decrease. So current tax rate is 55.6 cents. It's going down to 52.21 cents, which is around a 3.4 cent tax decrease. Utility rate increases as recommended by the consultant. It's another item that we have on the agenda tonight to go over that. It'll be a whole different presentation, but the budget's been included around those rate increase proposals. There's a pass-through tax rate increase through Republic Services of 7.7 cents. There's another agenda item related to just the trash rate increase as well. In addressing some of our strategic plan was added new staff, so there's 9 new proposed positions there. Want to make sure that we draw out the 2 firefighters. Currently, right now, we have 3 shifts, and each shift currently only has 2 firefighters. The standard is around 4 firefighters per shift, per vehicle, and so by adding these 2 firefighters, we'll complete the 3 per shift. And then the idea is we also have programming in there for part-time, and the chief tries to work that part-time in, so we actually have 4 per shift. So we're getting back up to the standards there. We got a school resource officer included in that as part of the new, wouldn't call it Unfunded Monday, but the school district's helping fund 70% of that, as well as we're adding a police sergeant. There's some other items related to staffing that's included in the budget. Part of that includes adding a traffic officer as well as a narcotics investigator. And so those aren't new positions. They're moving staff within the department to address some of the narcotics and illegal drugs that we have going on in the city, as well as address traffic control issues when we have 18-wheelers that are off the truck route going through downtown or going to certain places where they have to back up and they're causing traffic jams, as well as taking poles and lines out. So the traffic unit will be addressing some of those needs. Some other budget highlights: the TMRS rates, that's the pension for employees, decreased from 6.31 cents to 6.24 cents. So employees put in 5% or mandatory put in 5% of their gross salary, and the city matches that 2 to 1. And so based on our actuary numbers, we're able to decrease that. So we're not actually having to put in the 10%. We're only having to put in the 6.24%. Again, there's no really significant changes in the employee health benefits. Earlier this year, we brought the new health plan to you. You approved that, and it's actually a decrease on the city side, and as a decrease to the employees on their side if they're funding their dependents. General fund balance, we have a requirement of 25% fund balance. So what you have before you, the proposed budget, is 28.6%. Fund balance for the water fund is at 68.3%. Fund balance for the natural gas fund is 27.4%. Fund balance for the wastewater fund is 55.1%. Our total supplemental items, so new programs, new positions, new equipment. This isn't replacement equipment, anything new. We had a total request of nearly $4.8 million. We're proposing funding $1.6 million, so unfunded was $3.1. So total revenues and expenditures for all of our funds. So we have the general fund is where basically your police, fire, streets, public works, anything that's not utility funded is in the general fund. Then you have your water, natural gas, and wastewater. Those are what we consider your proprietary enterprise funds. Those funds they charge fees to pay for those funds, where your general fund is where your property tax comes in, your sales tax, franchise fees, some fines and fees for court, as well as any parks fees and those type things come in. Economic development and capital projects, hotel motel fund. So hotel motel fund is where your hotel occupancy tax funds come into, and so that's around $161,000. And then we got debt service. That's where we pay our debt from. And then we got other operating, and we'll go into that later, but it's around 414 for total expenses is around 43.7 million of that. And then we have what we call internal transfers. So there might be a fund where we transfer money from a general fund to the debt service fund, and so you back out those transfers, so the true net is around 38.7. So how much is the city's budget? It's 38.7 million. This is just another way looking at those total revenues and expenditures. You'll see the general fund on expenditure-wise is around 34%, followed by the water fund at 24%, and your natural gas at 17%. Capital projects around 11%. Your general fund revenues, it's broken down between property taxes. We have industrial development agreements. Your industrial development agreements are what we consider like payment in lieu of taxes. Those are for your industrial partners that live out or that house outside the city limits that we still provide services to, and so they are industrial partners. And so with that, they pay 50% of their assessed valuation back to us on whatever our tax rate is for that year. And again, that's around $546,000. Then we have pilots, payment in lieu of taxes. So those are the payments that we receive from our utility funds. So utility funds, they pay a franchise fee. So Entergy, Mid-South, Optimum, and CenturyLink, they pay on their gross revenue. Well, since they're enterprise, since those are utilities that are providing services, there's a franchise fee that's charged. And so since we have a water, sewer, and gas services, utility service, we charge ourselves that same type franchise fee, and so that comprises of 1.1. We've got 2.6 million in there for sales tax. Again, we've been seeing double digits in our sales tax. However, we budget conservatively, and so we're only budgeting around a 6.9% increase. Mixed beverage, we've seen some double digits. We kind of kept that right there at nearly 10% increase. Again, the Hammer Speakeasy, as well as Rail and Rye and Red Boar Tavern, all of those we've seen increases in mixed beverage, and so there's some increases for that. Again, franchise fees. The others are small changes. Mainly when you get down to other, those deal with any grants or, for instance, the police department had a seizure that didn't use some seizure funds. So those type things, when that revenue came in, we're not proposing those revenues for next year. When we talk about the tax rate, so we got another separate separate budget, our separate agenda item strictly on the tax rate. We'll have a public hearing on the tax rate. We kind of want to go over that. As I mentioned, the proposed is 52.21 cents as opposed to the 55.6 cents that's for the current year. The average home value increased from $168,000 to $181,000. And that's actually wrong there. It says average homeowner will say the actual average homeowner will increase 12.51 cents, or $12.51 in 2024. Sales tax. So I want to make sure everybody understands how sales tax calculated. So currently, cities can charge a total of 8.25 cents tax rate, sales tax rate. And so of that, 6.25 of that goes to the state. So no matter what you're charged, if you 6.25 goes back to the state. If you purchase a new car, you're only charged the state amount. There's the local portion is not charged in that amount. So the city of that 8.25 gets 1.5% of that is divided out to 0.125 goes to EDC for community development, economic development purposes. 0.375% of that amount goes to property tax reduction. So as we calculate our tax rate that comes in effect. We actually have to figure in how much sales tax we will use to draw down what our tax rate will be. And then the general fund gets 1%. What you might not know and what the public might not know is part of the 8.25 0.50%, so half cent actually goes to Grimes County. And so the total revenue for sales tax is around 2.8, and that includes the amount the general fund gets as well as the EDC gets. And so the sales tax used for property tax reduction is around $580,000. Property values increased 14.93%. It's a little down from the previous year of 17.95%, but the average home value increased from $168,000 to $181,000. General fund expenditures, of course, this is broken out by departments. We got general administration, which includes our what we call draw a blank here. I'll come back to it. Finance, we got human resources, information technology, marketing, communications, development services. Police is over animal services, so we got police and animal control in there. We got fire and emergency management. They're combined together. Public works. We've got sanitation. So sanitation, all of Republic Services fees that we charge our residents, that's where we pay Republic Services for those fees, as well as operating our recycling center. The airport is a general fund expenditure for that. And then we've got municipal court, library, and parks and recreation, economic development and tourism, and then non-departmental. So general administration is going to cover city council as well as the city manager's office. And part of the reason that it's 1.238 is we've also got a lot of professional services in there, which are related to, we have an item to purchase $263,000 to purchase the UP property. Also included in that amount is the amount that we pay for, draw a blank here. Carry services for any legal services is also included in that. And we'll get further into what all is included on some of the other items as well. General fund summary and fund balance. So beginning fund balance for next year, we're proposing that we're going to start at $5.6 million. And then we've got total revenues coming in at $13.6 million, expenditures going out at $15 million, and then we've got a deficit. So when you hear the word balanced budget, so what is balanced budget? So balanced budget for us is not revenues minus expenditures equals zero. So if that was the case, then there'd be years that we would have enormous amount of fund balance just keep growing. Because if you budget your revenues and expenditures be the same, when your revenues come in high and your expenditures come in low, which generally what happens on a regular basis, then that surplus goes back to fund balance. So the question is then how would you spend the fund balance? And so we have a fund balance policy that says that a balanced budget is your beginning fund balance plus your revenues minus your expenditures, and whatever that equals needs to be at least be 25%. And so anything over 25%, it says that you can use those for specific purposes, such as one-time expenditures for any new programs or any items that were emergency purposes. So based on the proposed budget, we're ending our fund balance is unassigned fund balance is around 4.2, but our 25% fund balance, our 90-day requirement is 3.7. So we are over our 25% fund balance. So actually we have 29% fund balance for general fund. But when you look at what are the major budget items in the general fund, so the items over on the left-hand side represent $11.8 million or 78.7% of the entire general fund proposed budget expenditures of $15 million. So personnel represents a little over 50% of our entire budget, 7.5, which is 6.6 of that is existing salaries and benefits. We got salary adjustments. So in the budget, we included $1 per hour for every employee that's grade 7 or below or on a special pay, such as police, fire, dispatchers, or our utility departments. We also included some funds in there for certification pay. At a previous workshop, we brought to you about certification pay. You've asked me to bring that forward as an agenda item, so we'll have that on the, to finalize that policy on the September 25th council meeting. There's some promotions also in that amount of nearly $36,000, and the addition of 8 new employees in the general fund, around $671,000. Non-payroll supplementals that we have proposed is around $528,000. The Republic Services garbage contract is $1.2 million. Annual street project, annual street maintenance program is around $460,000. Capital lease purchase payments, so Enterprise lease is who we release our vehicles through, and so those total payments is around $613,000. The amount for Texas Birthday Bash on the expenditure side is $419,385. Our annual mowing contract, which we're in the process of bidding out, in prior years is around $250,000 or a little less. So we've increased that because we haven't bid that out in quite some time, and so we budgeted $300,000 for that. As I mentioned earlier, the purchase of the 3 parcels of land from Union Pacific is $263,000. The amount we spend on motor vehicle gasoline is around $156,000. And then we make a payment on a debt service related to the 2020 certificates of obligation debt payment from our M&O side of around $124,000. Generally, when you issue debt, you have that on the INS, your interest and sinking side. However, that wasn't done for that debt. That debt was being paid for primarily. That debt's related to the street, at your street CIP, street and utility CIP project that Mr. McKay got up and talked about, that the big CIP project. So since that portion is only related to streets, only $124,000 of that comes out from the general fund, and electricity is around $124,000. So everything on this page represents $11.8 million of the $15 million that we've proposed for the budget for the general fund. We move to the water fund. So water fund primary revenues is water sales of $3 million, utility improvement fees of $546,000, penalties and service charges around $95,000. Grant funds, so you'll see on the expenditure side where we've got a couple of CIP projects. That grant, that $2 million, is the amount that we're receiving from the ARPA. We received it back in 2022. We actually received the money, but until you spend it, you can't recognize it as a revenue. And so we budgeted for it to spend it this year, but we didn't spend it this current fiscal year, so we're proposing to spend it next year. So that's that $2 million amount there. Bond proceeds, those proceeds we issued related to the water tower, the water plant, as well as the water wells. So that's the bond proceeds coming in for the end of year estimate. So that's why you're seeing our end of year estimate being $7 million, and then you've got $15 million or $5 million for revenues for next year. When you compare that to the expense side, your expenses for next year is higher than your expenses this year. Again, if you look, when you look at the water production and the water distribution, water production, $2 million of that is related to the water well, and then the water tower is $4 million. So in the water plant, and so that's what makes up the biggest difference on the proposed increases. Water fund major budget items. So again, looking at the same scenario, everything on the left represents $9.2 million or 89.2% of the $10.3 million proposed budget. Personnel is around $508,000, which is comprised of your current existing salaries and benefits, $488,000. Salary adjustments related to the dollar per hour is $11,000. Certification pay in the water fund is around $4,100, with promotions around $4,400. Capital items, as I mentioned earlier, $2 million is for water well number 9, and then the $4 million is for the water tower plant and ground storage of $4 million. And then you've got debt service payments around $1.2 million, reimbursement to the general fund for cost of around $1 million. So there's a lot of our positions that are funded out of the general fund. 100% funded out of the general fund. So you look at finance, you have 3 utility billing clerks. You've got a meter technician in that department as well. But all of their salaries are paid for, and their expenses that they do to operate are paid for out of the general fund, when 100% of their services are for utilities. And so there is a reimbursement transfer for those general fund costs, and that's around $1 million. A pilot, as I mentioned before, is a percentage for your franchise fee for the water fund's gross revenue. And then we've got electricity of $130,000. We're going to continue doing the fire hydrant maintenance program around $100,000, and then capital lease purchase payments related to enterprise lease, $21,000, and motor vehicle gasoline, $27,000. So again, on this page, $9.2 million, 89.2% of the proposed budget of $10.3 for the water fund. Water fund summary and fund balance. So we have beginning cash plus revenues minus expenses, gets you to your ending cash and investments. 90 days cash operating expenses is $983,000. And so it's not, you can't use, when they do 90 days or 25% of your total expenditures, because if you do that, you calculate it in your capital. Capital has to be pulled out. So the policy is 90 days cash operating expenses. So you back out those capital. We have excess of $1.7 million. And again, when we go over the water utility rate study and talk about the water rates, you'll understand why that excess is needed as we look forward to the years ahead. And then we got a total number of excess around 156 days. Natural gas revenues. So we got $6.3 million coming in for sales. And then again, you'll see the bond proceeds. We received bonds for the gas regulator station that we talked about that just finished, as well as the loop system that for Pecan Lakes, which is still in the process of we haven't even started the construction part, and that's around $1.3 million. So those bond proceeds, since we got them this year, we won't have those next year. So when you look at the expenditures here, again, the gas distribution, the reason for the increase is because we still got the 1.3 million project still, or 1.3 million still to go. We've paid some for engineering services, but we still have the construction part still left. So again, everything on the left-hand side represents 7.4 million, or 97.4% of the total expenditures of 7.6. 291,000 personnel. Of that, 266 is existing staff. The dollar per hour for salary adjustments and benefits is $9,400. Certification pay is $4,300, and some promotions, because you got a little bit more staffing in this fund, is allowing $11,000. Gas purchases. So the rates that we will be proposing tonight is for our operations. So those are the increase for the rates for the operations portion. Every customer in our natural gas system pays 100% of the gas cost. And so if you remember, we entered into a 3-year agreement for a fixed cost of that, which was significant decrease. It was nearly a 15% decrease from the previous year. And so that was a great savings we were able to lock in for 3 years. And so this is how much we pay for just the cost of gas. Again, we have the reimbursement to the general fund for personnel and operations costs that are paid for out of the general fund. A pilot is the amount that we pay for franchise on the gross revenue that the gas fund generates. Gas meters and regulators, those have increased quite a bit because we've got a lot more construction going on, so we have to purchase more gas meters of $174,000. We do have to budget depreciation, so we put that amount in there. And then we're also in the process of purchasing a traffic signboard. So if you've seen the one that TxDOT, I guess, puts out, or this last weekend we had the railroad track spur. Railroad tracks was finally completed. They had the signboard out there for that. So we split that cost. So $6,000 per fund. So the water fund, the natural gas fund, and the sewer fund will all pay $6,000 for that. Again, it will be primarily used for Public Works Department. However, we can put that out when we have any special events coming up, so we can let people know about special events. But primarily, it's for Public Works to know that, hey, we've got a line break, the detour traffic, or whatever it is that's happening. Motor vehicle gasoline, $12,000. Capital lease purchase payments for enterprise is $12,000. And then the capital related to, as I mentioned, the project that hasn't been completed is around $1 million for the Pecan Lakes subdivision gas loop. Fund balance and summary. We're going to start out next year with around 2.8 million. Revenue coming in at 6.4, expenses 7.6, and then you got to back out the depreciation. So ending cash investments 1.7. Our 90 days operating expenses is 1.5, and so you got excess of only 153,000. So number of excess days, so 7. So the actual for, you look at the actual back is 1. So this is why we have to have increases to our natural gas rates. Is you cannot sustain at number of 7 excess days. Wastewater fund. This is your sales for the sewer is around 2.4 million. Again, bond proceeds were related to the CIP project. However, we weren't able to complete that CIP project. We actually had to have emergency funds because we had issues at the sewer plant earlier this year where Mr. McKay was talking about the clarifiers and those things were out there. We had to have those made. So we had to use some funding for that. So we're not proposing issuing debt for that. We just are having to use our cash to pay for that that next phase project, which you'll see here when you talk about the sewer collection side and the water treatment plant expenses there. Those are where those expenses come in. And then you've got your major budget items in your sewer fund. Again, everything on the left represents 2.2 million or 87.3% of the total $2.6 million budget. 388,000 is personnel. Of that, 294,000 is related to existing salaries and benefits. The dollar per hour is around 9,400. Then you got certification pay around 11,000. Promotions in that department is around 4,900. And then we added an additional wastewater operator 2, which is around 68,000. Again, reimbursement for general fund for their costs is around 417. Depreciation 275. We pay $419,000 for debt service payments related to debt that's related to the wastewater fund. We have a pilot, that's that franchise fee portion for the gross revenue from the wastewater fund of $225,000. Continued maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant, we increased a little to 110. Capital lease purchases, capital lease purchase payments for enterprise for our leasing of our vehicles around 92,000. Electricity costs to operate our sewer system is around 99,000. We spent around $19,000 for a motor vehicle gasoline. And then we've got the capital, that phase 2 is around 224,000. So again, getting back to finalizing the phase 2, which we were supposed to do this year, but we weren't able to. And then you got your fund balance. We ending cash and investments projected around 962,000. Total revenue coming in at 2.5, expenses 2.6. Ending cash and investments is around 1.1. 90-day operating expense requirement is 552, so we got excess of 630. So a little bit higher than our gas fund, but still at 108 excess number of days. Talk about Economic Development Corporation. So the Economic Development Corporation, sales tax there, as I mentioned earlier, they get that's another portion of our sales tax. That's around 236,000. They have no personnel service charges to that. The Economic Development Director is paid for out of the general fund, but we do have materials and supplies of around 110. Professional fees, and then we got the bond and loan debt payment. So if you'll remember, a couple years ago, you issued debt to pay for the parking lot over off of Railroad and right by the railroad tracks. And so that's that debt payment for that capital project. So total budget for the Economic Development Corp is around $315,930 with an ending fund balance of $289,000. Major budget items for them, as I mentioned, is the debt payment, special projects that come up throughout the year that EDC, the actual board, can award for incentives or those type of things. There's $100,000 allocated. Small grants for facade or signs, those type of things is $10,000. We pay a third-party consultant, retail coach, to help us with retail recruitment, as well as providing some consultant business for us, as well as our GIS planning Zoom prospector, which we split with the chamber. We go to TEDC and retail live conferences, billboard advertising, advertising for the sponsorship for the Bryan College Station Chamber Economic Update. A new item that we've added in there is Placer AI data analysis. So the EDC board will be getting a presentation, I think, in October on that, and so that will be a data analysis that we can do on our own and get real-time data on when we talk about cell phone data. So how many people were in downtown the specific date? We do not have to reach out to Retail Coach and ask them to put that together and get it, a couple weeks later, a month later. We can actually get that information in-house, and so it's a great tool, as well as EDC education providing. And just so you'll know, the EDC board approved this budget on August 16th of this year. Other funds, the hotel motel fund, again, $160,000 comes in for a hotel. When you stay at a hotel here in town, the hotel motel tax you pay, portion of that the city gets to keep, and you get around $160,000 for that. And there's specific requirements of what you can spend those funds on. And so right now we spend the majority of that related to the Arts Council of Brazos Valley. We partner with them to handle our Navasota Artist in Residence program. And so we can use 15% for the arts, which is around $20,744, and 1/7 of our hot funds can be used for advertising, around $19,756. Of that, we can also, anything that we have historic preservation. So our Horlock House is a historic site, and so we're able to use those funds to maintain and upkeep those that project. And so we got HVAC of $10,000 and other upkeep projects for $5,000. And another item that the state now allows usage for is wayfinding signage. So we have in there the wayfinding signage phase 2. Again, wayfinding signage phase 1 is in the process. We have removed everything related to facilities and park signage. And so this is strictly just related to the wayfinding signage, as well as anything for the signage in the downtown. So we got downtown parking, the downtown branding, and those type of things is included in this phase, as well as the only park signage is going to be the August Horse disc golf course signage, which is included in phase 2. Capital projects. So this is where all of our capital projects are recorded, and so proposing put bond proceeds, but bond proceeds, we can talk about that a little bit later in just a minute. But total projects, we've got around $4.8 million, and kind of get you an idea of what these projects are. So we've got land and improvements of around $368,000. So recently, the city purchased Navasota Theater Alliance property adjacent to City Hall to be a parking lot for city vehicles. And so primarily for the police department. So if you've tried to come during the week when we're in operation, City Hall's open, it's real hard because we have our police vehicles that take up half the parking lot, and then employees take up the other half around City Hall. And so by providing this parking over there, it will be a fenced-in parking lot. It's not going to be a public parking lot. It's going to be strictly for use for public safety vehicles, as well as any public safety personal vehicles as well, or any city vehicles that we have that stay on site here will be located at that area. And then also, as I mentioned, if we need to, we can also use the capital projects to purchase the Union Pacific Railroad property, around $263,000. Additional ramp for the north end of the airport is $310,000. Police dispatch consoles, we need 2 of those, around $136,000. Upgrade the audiovisual system here in the council chambers, around $125,000. And then as we talk about parks projects, we got park improvements, $415,000, which includes a pavilion at Hillside Park, restrooms at Hillside Park, as well as a pier at Patu Pond. The municipal swimming pool improvements, which includes the pool plaster, pool fence, decking, wall repairs for the bathhouse and locker room stalls and repairs, total are $263,000. And then also, as we look toward the Mance Liscombe Cedar Park expansion phase 1 at $3.2 million, which will include accessible playground and splash pad, a restroom, parking lot, which will have 48 spaces and 9 handicap and van spaces, 2 pedestrian bridges to cross over Cedar Creek, as well as trail sidewalks, 9 benches, some trash cans, and what we call the Navasota sign. Navasota sign is similar to what, if you've been by College Station's their city hall, they've got a new sign out there that says, "I love Aggieland," and so something similar to that is what we're proposing for there. And then you got land that we possibly need to get for trails and sidewalks, engineering costs. And then how are we going to fund these? And so, Council, what I mentioned during our work sessions that we've had before on the budget as well as the retreat, this is something that I would like for us to have discussions about next spring. So not asking for any decisions on moving forward with any of these projects right now. It's just that we need to identify grant funding, donations, sponsorships first, and then determine which projects we want to issue debt for. Again, I put in here total debt of $5 million would be an annual debt service payment around $450,000, which will be around a 6.5 cent tax increase, which projected tax rate of 58.75. Again, that's just projections based on our where we are currently. Doesn't mean that that's where we will end up or anything. Again, those will be further discussions next spring when we want to talk about the projects, because the $5 million is funding all of those projects, which I know that I've heard from some council members might not want to do all those, and we'll just discuss those. So that's what's in the capital projects. Debt service fund. So debt service fund is where we pay our current debt from. You remember your tax rate is divided in maintenance and operations, your M&O, and your I&S, which is interest and sinking. This is where the interest and sinking portion of your debt goes to. For property tax is around $365,000, and then the transfer in. So you remember where I talked earlier about that transfers? So these are your transfers from general fund, water fund, sewer fund, and natural gas fund. If there's debt, this is where it's paid for, so those funds have to transfer the money into here, and this is where we pay the debt from. So we pay around $2.2 million in total debt. Grant funds, so grant funds is just like what it says. Money comes in for grants, money goes out for whatever that grant money comes in for next year. The only thing we're proposing is related to the $300,000 grant that we're trying to submit for our comprehensive plan update as well as our zoning and subdivision ordinance review. Cemetery operating funds, and so we get miscellaneous income. Miscellaneous income could be anywhere from grave sales to monuments, those type things. And so it's quite a bit of money that comes in. The maintenance is strictly for maintenance of the roads and the grounds. Total budget for the operating of the cemetery is around $78,000. Board of Firemen Services, it's a pension thing that we provide for our volunteer firefighters. Really not expenditure, but we do receive some interest income for this. And then last year you approved the creation of a tax increment reinvestment zone for the majority of the land to the east of Highway 6, all the way out to our ETJ. And part of that, anything within the city limits portion, we divided that out this year because we created the TERS, and it's going to generate around $14,000 for your first year. So you're actually getting some money in your TERS. And so again, that'll be compounded because you had a base year that was created in 2021, December 2021, and then everything as it grows and everything grows that direction, that TERS will start growing and you'll see that number increase more. And then we also have our 501c3 Foundation for Community Projects Fund. Again, this is mainly from donations that we receive, around $17,000, and then materials and supplies, $15,000. Most of that is what we use for Blue Santa events. And then we talk about the budget calendar. So there's where we were. We had our August 28th, we did a workshop. September 11th, today we're actually having public hearing for the budget. We have a ratifying the tax increase reflected in the proposed budget. We'll have the first reading of the budget, as well as a public hearing and the first reading on the tax rate, and then utility rate increases and the Republic Services rate increases. And then on September 25th, we do the second reading of all those things I just mentioned. And council, if you have any questions, I entertain those. If not, you can have your public comment.
Yeah, just point of information, that is quite a bit to swallow there. And this is not the first time we have seen this, so we have had quite a bit of time for council to review and also pose questions to the city manager and discuss it. So, well, the hearing is open, so if anyone wishes to speak to the director of that presentation, please come forward to the speaker stand. They state your name and address. And 3-minute limit on speaking.
I thought we had people sign.
You already did it at the beginning.
Oh.
Okay, seeing none, we will close the hearing at 7:12. Is item number 6, which is consideration and possible action on the first reading of ordinance 1029-23, adopting the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2023, ending September 30th, 2024. And again, this is first reading. Can do the quick background on it there?
Yeah, just real quick.
We've gone over
Not
most
a
of it
lot.
already.
On the quick.
Yeah.
So it'll be real quick. So Mayor and Council, within your packet, just so you want to make sure you understand, you have in the packet, you have each fund, and I want to remind you, the council has authority at the fund level. So you set the fund level. The city manager has the authority at the department level. So you will be approving on the first reading of the ordinance for the proposed budget and the revised, as it's stated in here for each of those based on fund. So the total, even though I've mentioned it earlier, we took out the internal transfers, you still have to do the entire budget. So, Mayor, you have an ordinance number 1029-23, ask you to approve the budget for the entire city for the revised 2022-23 of $38,891,650, and for the proposed 2023-24 budget for all funds for $43,788,775.
Mayor and Council, just a reminder, this will need to be a record vote, a roll call vote on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the first reading of ordinance 1029-23 for the City of Navasota's fiscal year 2023-24 budget.
Second.
I think Josh got it. Motion by Mr. Gessner, second by Mr. Fultz, to approve on first reading ordinance 1029-23, adopting the budget for fiscal year October 1, 2023, ending September 30th, 2024. And all in favor, show of hands, record vote. Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries unanimous. Item 7, conduct a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment on the proposal to adopt the tax rate for fiscal year 2023-2024. Open the hearing at 7:16.
And this one I will be really quick. So Mayor and Council, required to hold a public hearing on the tax rate. So a public hearing on the tax rate, this tax rate will raise more taxes for maintenance and operations, the M&O, than last year's tax rate. The tax rate will effectively be raised 3.03% and will raise taxes for maintenance and operations on $100,000 home by approximately negative $27.90. So that's a required statement that we have to provide to you, and it's calculated through the Grimes County Appraisal District. As I mentioned earlier, the tax rate is decreasing from 55.6 cents down to 52.21 cents. That's broken out for next year. The proposed rate of 52.21 cents will be broken out to 46.89 cents for maintenance and operations, and for interest and seeking rate related to debt payments, 5.32 cents. Average home value increased from $168,000 to $181,000, and the no new revenue tax rate is 0.5085, as opposed to last year was 0.4958. Basically, that's your effective tax rate, if you remember that from the past. And the voter approved tax rate, this is the rate, the highest rate that we can charge without triggering an election for the tax rate, and that is the 52.21 cents. Mentioned earlier, your appraised values increased 14.93% to a total assessed valuation of $689 million, and that's less than what was the year before at 17.95%. Tax rate comparison. The tax rate that even though we're reducing it, it will increase a homeowner's taxes on a $100,000 value by $12.51 next year. So average home value, the $181,000 will generate $949.19 for the city's portion of the tax rate, as opposed to $936.68 cents for last year. Mayor, that's all I've got for the public hearing portion.
Open hearing again for the public comment on the adoption of the tax rate. Seeing none, we'll close the hearing at 7:19. Item number 8, consideration and possible action on the first reading of ordinance 1030-23, adopting the tax rate for fiscal year beginning October 1, 2023, ending September 30th, 2024. Also required a record vote. Okay.
Mayor and members of council, you have ordinance number 1030-23, which breaks out the tax rate between M&O as well as our INS rate. And it has a statement that's required that I read at the very beginning, which is a requirement. So Mayor and Council, I ask for you to conduct a record vote for approval of this ordinance on the first reading, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of the tax rate of 52.21 cents, which is effectively a 2.67% increase in the tax rate, and approve the first reading of ordinance number 1030-23, establishing the tax rate of 52.21 cents per $100 assessed valuation for fiscal year 2023 and 2024.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gessner, second by Ms. Peterson to approve the tax rate described in the motion effective for fiscal year 23-24. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion show record vote. Any opposed? Seeing none, unanimous approval. Item 9, consideration and possible action on ratifying the tax increase reflected in the budget for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Mayor, members of council, this is one of those items that I've been doing this for 23 years. I don't really understand why the state legislature requires us to do it, but back in 2007, they created House Bill 3195, which had amended Section 102.07 of the Texas Government Code, requiring city councils to take a separate vote to ratify the increased property tax revenue that were reflected in the budget. The proposed budget projected will raise more taxes and revenues than the previous year. Therefore, the city council is required to take a separate vote to ratify this property tax revenue increase. The projected increase in revenues from property taxes reflected in the budget as presented. The proposed budget for 2023-24 includes projected revenues from property taxes that are greater than the revenues from property taxes in the 2022-23 budget by $268,455, and of that amount, $185,871 is tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax rolls. Staff recommends the ratification of the property tax revenue increase from fiscal year 22-23.
This is not a record vote,
It is.
just to clarify.
And the reason would be the state legislation thrives on redundancy.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the ratification of the property tax revenue increase of $268,455 for fiscal year 2023-24.
Second. Motion by Ms. Peterson, second by Mr. Fultz, to approve the ratification of property tax revenue increase of $268,455 for fiscal year 23-24. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries. And again, just a point of information that you have made clear, but that, again, our tax rate is actually decreasing. The increase in tax is due to appraised values.
That we have no control over.
Okay. Item...
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Item 10, consideration and possible action on the first reading of ordinance 1032-23, amending the Code of Ordinances Appendix A fee schedule, Article A 13.000, adopting the revised sanitation rates for the city of Navasota with an effective date of February 1st, 2024.
Mayor, members of council, if you'll remember back, I guess right as I was getting here, you were approving the new contract with Republic Services. So you went out for bid and awarded Republic Services a multi-year agreement to provide residential and commercial trash services to the city. So Republic Services are the ones that provide those services. Pursuant to that agreement, there's a section in there, 5.03, which is labeled modification to rates, which is allows Republic Services to go out on an annual basis by July 31st of each year and look at the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, for all urban consumers, U.S. city average garbage and trash collections, and look at what that percentage of increase, or what that percentage is. And they did that this year, and that percentage is 7.7. And so that is the rates increases that is being proposed, is a pass-through rate increase that Republic Services pass on to us. So a resident's monthly garbage fee will be increased from $22.01 on a monthly basis to $23.70, which is an increase of $1.69. And again, that increase will not occur until February 1st of next year. And Mayor, you have an ordinance that's been provided in there, ordinance 1032-23, that has those increases provided on those specific rates as identified in section A13.001 of our sanitation rate and charges.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the first reading of ordinance number 1032-23, amending the Code of Ordinances Appendix A fee schedule, Article A 13.000, adopting the revised Republic Services sanitation rates for the city of Navasota, Texas, with an effective date of February 1st, 2024.
Motion by Mr. Gessner, second by Mr. Foltz to approve first reading of ordinance 1032-23. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries. Item 11, consideration and possible action on the first reading of ordinance 1031-23, amending the Code of Ordinances Appendix A fee schedule, Article A5.000, adopting revised water, gas, and sewer monthly rates for the city of Navasota with effective date October 1, 2023.
Mayor and members of council, in May of 2022, city staff received written proposals for professional services to aid the city of Navasota in our utility rate study for water, natural gas, and wastewater rates. The city chose and selected New Gen Strategies and Solutions. They designed a rate study that addressed three major components. We talked about revenue requirement analysis, which is reviewing operating and maintenance expenses, as well as capital-related and cash needs. They looked at cost of service analysis, identifying unit costs of services and distributing costs by class, which was reviewing the demand, the maximum day and hour peaking of usage, as well as customer costs. And then they did a rate design analysis, understanding the market evaluation by customer class, price, economic development perspective, and equity and rate equity and stability, which we looked at fixed and variable charges, meter equivalency, and price. And so back in January, we had a workshop where the consultant came to us and provided what you see before you now is the a portion of the rate study. That rate study provided council with two scenarios. It provided you with scenario option one was an immediate implementation of rate increases in March 2023. And as well as in October. So residents, if they would have if council would have chose that scenario, we'd have an increase in March as well as an increase in October. The other scenario was increases in October, and so council asked staff to move forward with the budget process and implement only one rate increase and do that in October as opposed to doing it in two steps. And so that part of that, the analysis that the rate consultant provided was to provide us with a 5-year analysis of what those rates should be over the next 5 years. And so within your, I just distributed and within the presentation here, which I'll go over in a little bit, I have provided to you a history of our water, which is our base rate, our volumetric rate for water, gas, and sewer, all the way back to our fiscal year 2015-16. So we'll look at that in a bit, but I want to make sure that you notice in the last 8 years, we had 3 years with no change, where we did not change any rates. And so the most recent change that we've had in our rates occurred in October of 2021. And so kind of want to go over so you can remember about this rate study, and so our audience and residents can understand of how we came up with the rates. And it wasn't just us coming up with some numbers, there was theory behind that. And so they talked about the importance of local officials in the utility management, that, as I mentioned earlier, our water, sewer, and gas, they operate like a business. They're supposed to pay 100% for themselves. There's not supposed to be a huge amount of profit, but there's also not supposed to be a negative amount in there. And so they're supposed to operate much like a business. The council is what they consider the board of directors, and you have to address complex industry challenges such as rising costs, aging infrastructure, and customer affordability. And so those are things we understand. We understand a lot of our residents and our businesses. They operate on fixed incomes. There's a lot of economic times we've had, but we also are operating a business too, and so we have to be able to manage our business of providing these services to our residents, and this is part of the process. And so we looked at capital improvements. So a large portion of putting together a rate structure plan is addressing our capital and what our future capital looks like. And so you'll notice in fiscal year 2026, it's stacked up pretty high there. And when you look at the total debt, and the reason was the consultant knew that we were looking at it, possibly we need to expand and do a new wastewater treatment plant. Well, that's a $5 million expense. But if we put it in fiscal year 2027, when you looked at your rate structure, you wouldn't see it because it's another year out. So they moved it in 1 year. So the year that we're proposing for the increases, you'll see all the other years. Those are just amounts to try to see if we need to get there. We will continue to look at our working capital to make sure we're within our fund balance requirements, and then providing what excess fund balance we need to for capital projects. And so looking at this, we've got a total projects currently of 2023, the current year we're in, around 8.7. That is your, you'll look there, that natural gas, that's at 1.6. That's the Hollister gas station. That's the Pecan Lakes loop system. Wastewater, that's that wastewater phase 2 that we were supposed to do. And then 6.7 million related to water. That's the water tower, the water wells, as well as the water plant. And so you see throughout there, adding a little bit of capital each year. And then again, the 12.12, the majority of that is related to $5 million for putting in and starting up another wastewater treatment plant. So additional staffing. So as we talked in the workshop, we talked about one of our strategic plan goals is staffing. And so Public Works has identified through this process new staffing over the next 5 years. And so for the water fund, 4 new technicians starting every year. And then wastewater and natural gas alternating years. And so next year we're proposing the wastewater. This year we did the natural gas. So the following year would be another natural gas and wastewater, if you kind of understand how that goes. So you take staffing. So you got capital, we got staffing, and then we have to look at our operations and what our current rates are performing. So for water, if you look here, based on our current structure and the current revenue, so your revenue here, and then you got revenue for 2024 proposed in those your current rates. So your revenue's coming up here, right through here, the purple line, but look at your expenses. And then you got numbers of cash days of cash on hand. So this is your working capital. So we had a really good fund balance here, but as you go out, your expenses are your reserve targets here, but your reserves are actually dropping down. It's because you're spending more of it. And this is based on your current water structure, your current rates that you're providing. When you look at your wastewater's, you've got your expenses in green, and the purple line is your revenues. So again, your expenses are higher than your revenues, which causes your fund balance to start dipping down and significantly starting next year. And then natural gas, Natural gas is a little bit better. So natural gas, that's why when you looked at the rates, I don't know if you actually looked at what the difference is in the rates, but the natural gas, the rate increase isn't so significant for your natural gas. That's because your expenses are right here, but your revenues are right here. So your fund balance doesn't start dropping until 2026, 27, and that's when you need to see some larger increases. So this is based on your current. So the goals that we asked the consultant to look at is we want to maintain our 90 days. We also need to provide not only the 90 days, but above that 90 days, we need to provide debt service coverage at least one time. And what that means is we need to be able to pay 1 year's worth of debt payments above the 90 days. So when you see that excess, you might say, okay, well, we got excess. Why do we have excess? We shouldn't have excess. We should not raise rates. Well, no. That excess is we should have debt service coverage above the 90 days, okay? So you have 90 days requirement. That's what the policy says. You can't drop below. But you need above that excess enough to cover at least one times your debt service payment. And each utility should cover its own expenses. And so this is our current residential and commercial rates. And so everybody understands, we have a monthly base rate. So your base rate everybody pays. And then volumetric rate is the amount you're charged per 1,000 gallon for water. Your wastewater, so wastewater, we charge a base rate, and that covers up to 3,000 gallons of water. And anything over 3,000, you're charged $2.79. And then natural gas, we have a minimum charge of $11.89. And then the volumetric rate is $3.82 per MCFs. So they're designed a rate structure that addresses what we call meter equivalency. So the American Water Works Association say 50% of the equivalency factor should be charged an additional fee. And so that means larger meters. So if you have, most of us in this room, your residents, you either have a 3/4 inch or 1 inch, but majorly 3/4 inch. So your bigger businesses, commercial, your bigger houses that might have some major irrigation or something, might have bigger meters. We have some people that might have 4 or 6 inch water meters. Well, those larger meters create a larger demand on the system because you're having to pull more water, more pressure to it. So with that, they're more capital intensive on the entire utility system. So I'll make sure everybody understands when water comes in, it doesn't immediately just go to one location. It's dispersed throughout the entire city. So it has to be dispersed to everybody. So that's why we just make sure that customers with larger meters pay their way on their base rate. So when you look at the new charges, you'll see your base rates are going to be based on meter size. And then on the volumetric tier, so previously, no matter if you used 15,000 gallons of water or you used 500 gallons of water, you were charged the same rate. And so in order, in an era where we are now, where we've got to conserve because of, we have another summer like we did this year. Luckily this year we went to stage 1 where it was voluntary cutbacks for watering. That might not be always the case. And so by putting volumetric tiers, those people that use the majority, a lot more water, pay for that service. So it doesn't mean that you can't go not water, but if we're not under a drought conservation measure, you can go and water as much as you want. You're just going to pay more for it. So consumption spikes for peak watering seasons create additional storage. There's a 10% to relatively low differential, but normal way to phase in the tiers. And so the best practice is to charge an inclining cost for increasingly discretionary use. And so we decided to, working with the consultant, we came up what we call, it's actually 4 tiers. So these are the tiers, how they're located down here. So you got 0 to 2,000, which is the majority of us in the room. There are some of us that have larger lots that might do 2,000 to 5,000. And then we got 5,000 to 15,000 and everything over 15,000. So everything over 15, only 8% of our monthly customers are billed over 15,000. So majority of us in the room are not part of this amount here. We're somewhere over here in this area here. We took an average residential amount. is around 6,200 gallons of water for a 12-month period from August of last year to July of this year. And so, as I mentioned earlier, there was 2 scenarios put together. The first scenario was no rate change until October, which would include the 50% meter equivalency factor, and then the 4-tier structure to residential. And then scenario 2 was a rate change in October, or March and October with the meter equivalency and the 4 tiers. And so what I did was I came in here and provided analysis of here's what the rates have been since 2015-16. So we went from $13.79 base rate for our residents on water, and going all the way to proposing if you have a 3/4 inch meter, it would be $18.65. And if you have a 1-inch meter, which there's not a lot of residents that have that, but there are some, at $24.87. And then, as I mentioned before, previously we had water volume charges, no matter how much you use, was a specific dollar amount. So back in 15-16 was $4.70. The next year we went up 10 cents. We didn't increase it the next year. The next year it went up another 10 cents. Next year it went up 20 cents. Stayed the same the next year. Then we went up 30 cents. And then this year we're actually proposing for next year to have the 4 different tiers. And so again, 0 to 2,000, 2001 to 5,000, 5001 to 10,000, and everything over 15,000. Your gas base rates started at $10.31. Proposing for next year $14.52. Gas volume increased slightly throughout the years, a little bit higher than what in the later years there, but at $4.66 for proposed for next year. And then for your sewer, your wastewater, you have a base rate that was $22.91 back in 15. It's going up to $36.50. But you're not billed for anything under 3,000 gallons of water, so you're only billed for anything over. And so that's $3.85 for anything over. So I took an example of what we call our average residential usage from August of last year to July of this year. So water, the average user used 6,200 gallons. So the base rate, again, went from $15.92 to $18.65. Their volumetric rate would go from $33.48 to $41.89. So the increase on the water is $11.14. Natural gas base went from $11.89 to $14.52, and the volume average was around 2.27 MCFs. And so that goes from $8.67 to $10.58 for a total increase of $4.54. And wastewater, as I mentioned, the base rate covers up to 3,000 gallons, so it's going from $26.43 to $36.50. With a volume of 4,300 gallons, you're only billed for the 1,300, so the 1,300 goes from $3.63 to $5.01. So for that average residential user, their bill is going from $102 to $127.15, which is an increase of $27.13. But understanding that there's a lot of people that are on fixed incomes, so those residents are using about 2,000 gallons on an average basis. So they would experience a water increase of around $4.59 per month. Natural gas stay the same, and then based on the usage for the water, if you compare it with the wastewater, would be at $10.07. So that's around a $19.20 increase as opposed to the $27.13. Again, it's based on the user. So depending on how much you use, depends on what your increase will be. Again, these rates are being put in place to pay for the operations as well as pay for capital expenses as well as maintaining what we have now. As you well know, we're having to do the large capital improvement project, which includes a lot of water and wastewater and drainage issues. And so these increases are needed in order to, number one, maintain your working capital, your 90 days, as well as start working toward gathering enough cash to be able to have at least one time's coverage for your debt payments. At this time, I'll entertain any questions you might
What
have.
percentage of customers have gas service?
No.
So we have about 1,800 customers with gas meters.
So that's probably
About half.
50%. Close.
About half.
2/3 or so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Mayor, Member Council, you have in there in your packet ordinance number 103123 for the first reading of the increases to those monthly water, sewer, and gas rates as proposed based on the study. With an effective date of October 1. We're not proposing the increases for the other years. I know that I put in there what the rate consultant put in there for fiscal year 25, 26, and 27. That's just for your information purposes, so you see what they have out there. Again, we'll evaluate that next year when we go through the budget process. If you have any questions, I entertain those.
So I guess mainly what you're saying is if someone want a green yard, they're gonna pay a little bit more than just an ordinary person.
Correct, and I think there are some people that you probably don't have a green yard and they probably spent a lot of money this year on it and it's still not green. But yes, sir, if you want a green yard, you're gonna have to pay. But again, that's only based on historical numbers, it's only 8% of our customers use over 15,000 gallons. Residents.
Those reserve minimums are set by the state.
So the reserve minimums are set by the council by policy. So we have a fund balance policy that says our general fund, water, sewer, and gas is 25% fund balance of operating expenditures. Yes,
Which
ma'am.
I'm guessing is probably based on what's
It's actually-
required
it's-
from general fund through the state.
It's actually recommended by the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, or has that recommendation. Yes, ma'am. It's not required by the state, but it's a good practice. So one of the things that
Something they don't
when we
require.
issue debt, we have to be rated by credit rating agencies. So Standard & Poor's, Fitch Ratings, our Moody's, whenever they go out and rate us, if we are not abiding by the policy or they think our fund balance is too low, then number one, they might downgrade us on our credit rating, which causes our interest rates to go higher.
Yeah.
So that means if it's a project that we have to do, then our residents are going to have to pay more to offset those costs for that debt, for those interest payments. It's just like your credit rating. So the better you are at your credit rating, personally, you lower your interest rate. It's the same way. It's just like a business you operate. They look at multiple things, but one of the things they do look at is that amount of our working capital and making sure that we have funds available based on what our policy says, as well as wanting to make sure that we have enough funds to pay for our debt for the next year.
And if we were to continue on what we're doing, and I'm really just saying that I basically understand and I'm making sure that there's clarification for the public. If we were to continue then at the way that we are with the increased in costs to the city to maintain all of these things, at that point the taxpayer would be footing the bill of their neighbor's water?
So what's going to happen is we issued debt. We've issued.
Which we cannot avoid at this point.
Right. So we issued debt back in 2020 for the large capital CIP project. We just issued debt for the water tower, which again, I want to make sure you understand, the water tower we have to have. We are at the max connections.
That's legal that we
have
have
to
to have it.
TCQ will, if we do not do that,
the
state will start charging us by the day for not meeting those requirements. In addition to that, we have to have capacity to be able to grow. And if you don't pay for if you don't issue the debt and get the infrastructure in place, then we can't grow. But we've issued debt. If you draw down too far, your operating cost is going to be higher than your revenue coming in, and so then you're going to be in default of your debt payments, and that's somewhere where you don't want to be.
Yeah.
In addition, let's take the wastewater treatment plant for instance. We had no idea that the clarifier was going to go out. And so that was around $300,000 of expenditures. If you don't have that in fund balance, then the general fund's going to have to fund it somehow. And that, I mean, again, you're going to have to fund something's going to have to be funded. Either it's going to come from taxes or it's going to come from the water. So your enterprise funds, your water, sewer, and gas,
Have to pay for themselves.
The users pay for it.
Right. And that includes the usage plus the maintenance, plus
Correct.
everything else, and all of the things that we're required by the state to maintain and keep up with reserves and all of that. And all of this is going to bring us up and prepare us for the growth.
It's not only for the growth, but the continuation of maintaining what we have now. I mean, I heard earlier about somebody's water, a resident having, so I don't know where they live, but that could be some of the issues is because the old pipes that we have out that way could be costing. And so that's what we're doing now is replacing a lot of our old infrastructure, our clay piping and stuff like that needed to be replaced years ago. So when I tell you this is the first CIP, please understand when I say first, because there's going to be more
Way behind, yes.
that's going to come that we have to update. In addition, when our rate consultant, I didn't put it up there, but there were back in January when they compared the proposed rates for our other surrounding cities, we were about in the middle. Other cities are going up on rates too, and so we don't know what those rates are. But again, you can compare them, but we need to set, our rates are being set based on our costs that we have to provide. Again, it's a business.
You can't basically.
We can't continue to do it. We have to, in order to provide the utility services, we have to be able to fund it. And it's not like trust me, I get it. I live here too, and I have to pay for it as well. And so.
Commercial, so yeah.
Yeah, so I understand.
And just for clarification, this study was only for residential?
No, it was for citywide. It was commercial,
okay,
so everything.
commercial.
Commercial, industrial, everybody is affected. Everybody's going to share in the growth.
Yeah, it's that usage part that would kick in more for the commercial
Correct, yeah,
side.
so commercial business is going to use a lot more.
Right.
A lot more than, and they're going to have bigger meters. So.
Bigger meter pays more.
Bigger meters.
Mr. Mayor, I move to consideration of, what am I doing?
Number
To
11.
approve the first reading of ordinance number 1031-23, amending the Code of Ordinances Appendix A, the fee schedule, Article A 5.000, adopting the revised water, gas, and sewer monthly rates for the city of Navasota with an effective date of October 1st.
2023.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Peterson, second by Mr. Gessner to approve on first reading ordinance 1031-23. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries. Item 12, consideration and possible action on the appointment of Councilmember Patty Peterson to the Arts Council Brazos Valley Board at the term end of current board member Grant Holt.
Mayor's and council, Michelle was going to come up and present this, but I'm going to go on because I got some information today I want to be sure to pass along. So currently, right now, Grant Holt is the board member that was selected to represent Navasota in the Arts Council Brazos Valley organization. His term expires September 30th of this year. So I asked Patty Peterson if she would graciously agree to serve on that board, and she said that she would. And so the item you have before you tonight is to appoint her to be the new board member of the Arts Council at the expiration of Grant Holt's term. Also wanted to let the council be aware, we earlier this year, city staff reached out to the Arts Council. Now that we've got a grant coordinator on staff, we reached out to them and said, hey, we want to bring the grants portion that we provide through hotel motel funding. We want to bring that back in-house. We want to be able to, for several years, it's been the same three organizations that's received funding, which was the Navasota Theater Alliance, Chamber of Commerce related to one of their events, as well as Washington on the Brazos. And so understanding that, we thought, hey, we'll bring that back in-house, handle that internally, and then allow the Arts Council to refocus and do all of their publicity and put all their primary services toward our Navasota Artists in Residence program. Prior to me coming, I heard that in the past you've had 3 artists there twice a year, and when I came we had 2 this last session, and it was really difficult to get those 2 when I first came. This last time we've had only 1. We just went out and did interviews, and they narrowed it down to 3. And we got notification today that all 3 have backed out of that. The Arts Council is saying that has to do with COVID, that a lot of people are not wanting to do any transitioning or anything due to COVID. I don't know what the reasoning is. One of the applicants was from Uganda, so I'm sure trying to get a visa to come into the United States was a little bit more difficult than they projected. One of the other residents was in San Antonio, decided to do something different. So with that, I think it's important that we get somebody on the Arts Council, a board member that can be a vocal point for the city. They did request, even though we were going to move the grant funding portion related to the grants back internally, that we have somebody on the board. And so I think we need to make sure they understand how important the Artists in Residence program is to Navasota, and try to work with them about seeing what we can do to salvage and find a way to get this program back off High Center, and so we can get at least 2 to 3 residents in on a regular basis. And so I'll be sure to pass along any information to the council member as soon as I get it about when meetings are. But I just ask council if you'll make this nomination. I'll make sure that she's up to speed on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint Councilmember Patty Peterson to the Arts Council of the Brazos Valley Board as a representative from the city of Navasota to fill the expiring term of Grant Holt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Full, second by Mr. Gessner to appoint Ms. Peterson to the Arts Council Brazos Valley Board as City of Navasota representative. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Seeing none, item carried. Thank you for agreeing to do that. You need more to do, right? Sure.
Oh, y'all know how much I love it.
Yeah. Item 13, consideration and possible action to approve change order number 1 for the airport hangar utilities extension project in the amount of $1,000 even.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So, in summary, this is a fairly small one, but what this is an area that we thought we could salvage of an existing drainage structure, an existing flume. We thought it had a surface crack on it, but when they got it isolated away from the existing driveway and in this dry ground, we noticed that crack went all the way down through. So this is the money based on their unit bid price, plus a little bit for the demolition costs to pull out that section of the flume and re-pour it in new with the rest that we're doing. At a high level, we're still $3,000 under the budget, and we're still $35,000 underneath the second lowest bidder. This lowest bid, also had the lowest unit bid for this. They were at $80 square yard, as opposed to $99 a square yard, which was the lowest bid price we saw for the flume elsewhere. So this is really something that makes a lot of sense for this project. Otherwise, it's just going to be our guys coming back in 6 months and taking time out of cleaning ditches and fixing potholes to fix this flume. So let's just get it done while we're there.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve change order number 1 for the airport hangar utilities extension project in the amount of $1,000.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gessner, second by Mr. Fultz to approve change order number 1 for the airport hangar utilities extension project in the amount of $1,000. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries. Item 14, consideration and possible action on appointments to the Charter Review Committee. Mr. Weeks?
Mayor and Council, charter election is something that something that you need to look at on a regular basis. We've not done a charter election in quite some time, and so the charter election is the charter is your bylaws. It's what governs. Those are things that you can't you tell you what you can do and what you can't do, and so outside of state law, it is one of the next binding things that we have at our tool belt here. And so the idea is every 2 years you can update it, but generally at least every 10 years you actually go in and do what we consider a charter committee. You establish a committee within the public. We meet on a regular basis and go line by line in the charter for any changes, as well as we meet with legal counsel. Legal counsel over the last 10 years probably identified several things that state laws changed, or things that we've had some issues we've came across that he would recommend from a legal standpoint that we need to change. And so this process will last at least 2 months, meeting on a regular basis. Idea would try to be done before December, and that way in December we'll come to council. The committee will make a recommendation to council. Council will have some interaction with the committee, and the idea is to January we have ballot language that's put together. I think February, when's the last date to call the election? February?
I haven't looked at my
Yeah, it's
calendar, but it'll be
February.
in February.
Yes, sometime in February. We've got to call the election, and so we've got to get the ballot language, and so every change is a separate item. So, for instance, if we have, I can't give you an example, but every item on there, and so it could be quite lengthy because we haven't done it in quite some time. So ideally, again, after we do it this time, every time the legislature meets and we have changes, we need to come back and be redoing this and updating it. And you don't have to do a full committee. And so the idea is, what I ask you to do is submit some names, and for tonight you're going to vote on what that committee is going to look like. And so each council member, you'll have a selected person that you want to be part of that committee, and then we're going to have a part of a regular council meeting we'll have those committee members come in, and we'll have an item where you can have open dialogue about the charter, where you as council can communicate to the committee about what your thoughts and ideas are, those type things. And then the committee will be charged with making those recommendations as we go each week, as well as reaching out to the public, and if there's anything in the public that they want to see that to make changes as well. These meetings will be open to the public, so just because someone is not put on the committee, the meeting will be open to the public. We're going to be doing Zoom meetings with legal counsel, so legal counsel will be on those meetings to hear what's going on in those meetings, as well as cut down on some costs of some travel. I don't think you want to come here every week. And then the other thing is...
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. And then...
Even virtually.
Yeah. And the idea is to take little sections at a time, not the whole bit at one time. And so tonight, I know each of you have submitted. I know the mayor submitted a couple people. The mayor pro tem, Bernie Gessner, has submitted some names as well. Councilmember Peterson submitted a name, as well as Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Fultz. I just want to caution, we want to make sure that you don't flood the committee with same board members. So there's a lot of these, I've noticed some of these might have might be on the same board. So for instance, there's a couple of these that are on P and Z. You don't want to have you don't want to flood your committee with all P and Z members. You want to kind of get a cross-representation of the entire community. But again, the idea is for these committee members will be meeting with representatives from the council as well as the public to get feedback about what changes need to occur, as well as each time we have the meetings, we'll have an opportunity for the public to give comment as well.
Any suggested number
of
members on the committee?
So it doesn't bother me at all.
Well,
I mean, I just want to make sure that each council member gets an opportunity to select. But you can select more than one. When I was on a committee at my hometown, I think there was each council member got 2 selections, or maybe each council member got 1, the mayor got 2. I don't remember what it was, but that again, it's clearly up to whatever you want. Again, the idea is to get a consensus of the group of what needs to come forward to council. And again, at the very end, doesn't mean whatever the committee gives to the council that you have to accept it. The council makes the final decision of what is going to be put on the ballot. Just make sure you understand that. But you're going to need the committee to help be your cheerleader as you go out, because once the charter election comes up, it's like a school board bond meeting or bond election. You can only give facts. You can't go out and say, please support this. You can only give factual information. So it's just like when we do when the school board does bond elections and the city does bond elections, you have to give just facts only.
Jason, too, as a reminder, legal counsel will go through first to make all of the legal changes that need to be made so that they don't get bogged down with that part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, question.
Yes, sir.
Matter of fact, I have 2. Is there any staff that's going to be on this committee, or just who the board nominates?
So it'd be myself and just our administration staff. There's not going to be any of this. None of the staff here in this room will be there. No, sir.
And they'll just basically be as a
Note taker.
as
Support.
staff support. Yeah.
Okay, and my second question: will this be a special call election, or will this go in?
No, sir. It'll be the May election.
Okay.
It'll be part of the May election.
So it would be ran through the county.
Yes, sir. It's the same ballot of. So I think next year there's 3 council members that are up, and whatever the county it's got on there, whatever the school district has on it. I mean, so.
Wouldn't cost any more.
It's going to cost about
$1,500
more for the ballot, just to get all that prepared.
Okay.
And Kerry said he'd do it for free. No, I'm just
No, he
kidding.
didn't. He didn't.
It's Stephen.
I don't think we have too many people that we could ask all of those people to be on the board.
Did everyone that was listed accept?
So again, you'd have to ask your,
Yeah, I didn't,
Did all of your people accept?
I didn't ask him.
no, I submitted names.
yeah, so we gotta make sure that there's, again, if you got different boards, make sure there's not a quorum. So,
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
See, P and Z gonna have.
and again, and I don't remember, that's why I mentioned it earlier, it was just brought to my attention, but I don't know who all, I don't keep up with all the board
I was
members.
like, I know of two,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
But,
You
I
got,
think it's
so-
three P
so
and
each-
Z's on
you
it.
got three that are on P
yeah,
and Z.
there are three on P and Z there.
It's seven.
That's not a
so
quorum.
It'll be a quorum now.
Yeah.
And I think,
I didn't realize that we could offer up multiple names. I thought it was to offer up a name. So that's why I offered one.
we're trying to guess.
But
And again, I just asked for a name, but if council members, if they give me multiple, they're in here. I'm just saying.
overachievers.
Yeah.
I offered up extras because you never know if they're all gonna accept.
Yeah, because the idea is, this is at least 4 to 6
Made
weeks.
sure they were gonna accept before I had them put their name
I
down.
did too.
So this is 4 to 6 weeks. That it's gonna be heavy intensive.
That was the thing, was I knew it was gonna be a lot of meetings.
And I really need for them to attend and be able to attend. Ideally, as I put in
Someone
here,
would take it seriously.
ideally, we put in here looking at Wednesdays. And the other piece is trying to figure out, it would have to be after work hours, so we're at 5:36. But you also gotta remember, we got legal counsel, that is gonna be on the call too. So we gotta make sure that we're cognizant of not just the committee members, but also with the staff too.
Well, how do we appoint people that haven't accepted?
So you can appoint whoever, and then we'll reach out
Yeah.
and make sure.
I knew they were gonna do that, so.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know that. I thought, I needed to make sure.
Hey, but no,
Yeah.
that's a bonus that you made the contact, so. Well, I'll just throw one out here. I'll just throw out, in the form of a motion, Deborah Richardson, Brenda Williams, Ashley Brasher, Dia Copeland. And again, that, I would limit it to those just because the other two are additional to P and Z.
Okay, hold on a second. So,
Third,
say
so
that-
we Mayor, I'm sorry.
Is she on PNC?
No, but I said I left two off that were, on the list because they were additional
Can
P
you
and Z,
repeat
and
them?
then I had three names, so I
Right.
just did one of them.
Yeah, I can't. I'm having a circle here.
Read your list again.
Deborah Richardson, Brenda Williams, Ashley Brasher, Dia Copeland. I think that was all I said.
Mm-hmm, you said 4.
2, 3,
You said 4, that's
4.
correct.
Yeah, you got 4.
But, that's just,
P and Z have 7 members, so it wouldn't be a quorum though, right?
Correct.
I'm not talking about a quorum, I'm talking about it's just better to not have multiple ones that are on the same board because they're, it's not all about P and Z, it's about expanding different things, but.
Yes, so.
But,
Yeah, so like if you did, the comprehensive plan, we're looking at the zoning ordinance, those are when you would want to have more people that are more involved with the planning and zoning. I'm just saying, get a cross-representation of the city so that it's a little bit more out there.
I really don't know.
You need detail
I did
people.
him, I mentioned him mainly because just the fact he's been in Navasota so long. And he, as much as he's travels, I would say he probably likely wouldn't, but could sure throw him out, include him on that list as well.
Throw him on there, and then if he can't do it, then we'll come back and change it.
Who are we talking about?
Or
Jared Penting.
Jared, yeah.
Are you amending your motion?
Yeah,
Well, you only did 4.
I may make it 5 with Jared.
Okay.
Jared Patrick.
Patrick.
Second.
So Deborah Richardson, Jared, Ashley Falco Versher,
For sure.
Dia Copeland, and
Versher.
Brenda Williams. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
You say Dia?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. Second.
She's back there.
Motion and a second by Mr. Fultz to, the slate of proposed members of the Charter Review Committee, Deborah Richardson, Brenda Williams, Ashley Versher, Dia Copeland, and Jared Patu. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries. And, who did we make it to? Jumping ahead in
15.
15, that's what I thought, okay. All right, item 15 is consideration of possible action on request from Christian Community Services, Inc., located at 814 North LaSalle, Navasota, Texas, for credit to their utility account in the amount of up to $200 per month, beginning October 1, 2023, ending September 30th, 2024.
Mayor and City Council, we received this very late last week, this request. I did reach out to Ms. Gaston several times, but I just kept getting her voicemail, so I'll just do it for her, if that's okay. They are requesting assistance with their utility bill. Currently, they are serving 195 Navasota families, which this translates to 368 Navasota residents each month. In 2022-23, Christian Community Services purchased 86,182 pounds of food from the Brazos Valley Food Bank, which equates to 74,584 meals. The cost of the food from the food bank amounted to $17,965. Total amount of food purchased for the year, including food purchased locally, totaled $33,500. They also supplied 60 pounds of food each month to the people that came in for help. They also offer a clothes closet as well. So again, they are requesting assistance with their utility bill, and in the years past, we've awarded up to $200 per month on their utility bill. And if you look at their history, that's about even. They're
I'll say, we've been doing this for about 20 years, right?
yes.
So question, when is that up to? Is it just a set amount, $200, or?
We don't go over 200.
Up to, it's just saying up to at this point. If their bill is 170, they get 170.
70.
Okay.
If it's over 200, then they pay the difference.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the request from Christian Community Services Center for a credit on their utility account up to $200 per month beginning October 1st, 2023 and ending September 30th, 2024.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fultz, second by Mr. Harris to approve Christian Community Services credit to utility account up to $200 per month, October 1, 23 through September 30, 24. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries. And the final item tonight is the consent agenda, which is the minutes for August and a municipal court report for August.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes and the municipal court report for August 2023.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gessner, second by Mr. Fultz to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, item carries. And with that being the final item, we are adjourned.